Hello and welcome. The debate in the run-up to the union budget has been focused on what the government is likely to do to raise revenues, reduce the fiscal deficit and simultaneously spur economic growth. Today we look at the impact the union budget has on consumers directly and how the finance minister's announcements on March 16th will impact how we spend on both essential goods and services as well as on lifestyle choices. To take us through this, I have with me Kishore Biyani, chairman of the Future Group, and he has an unparalleled view and perspective on the Indian consumer. So, Mr. Biyani, you're going to help us understand how this budget will impact the common man. And the first question is, what can we expect from the budget? Because we know different industries take different representations to the finance minister in the run-up to the budget. But I don't see consumers having a lobby, isn't it?
I think every taxpayer is a consumer. And when they feel that something is left in their hands, they tend to spend more. So anything which is raising up of the tax limits, anything which gives more in the hands of the consumer would be a welcome step for consumption.
In fact, from reports, research reports, and from what people are saying about what to expect from the budget, there is a sense that the income tax exemption limit will go up from the 1.8 lakhs to about 2.5 lakhs. Does that make a big impact on consumption? Do you, in the past, have you seen that immediately spur consumption when people have money to spend?
Nothing happens immediately, but yes, when a consumer feels he is richer than what he was, or he would become richer tomorrow, I think it tends to spend. The feel-rich factor is very, very important.
Mr. Biyani, let's take a look at the supply side now. It's widely believed that the fiscal stimulus provided post-2008 will be withdrawn and excise duties across board will be raised by about 2%. How will that impact consumer demand for consumer goods, all those essential everyday items from soaps to groceries and cigarettes even, where the excise hike is expected to be a sharp double-digit one? Nikita Rana reports.
According to Nielsen data, the over 1,60,000 crore rupee consumer goods industry has grown slower in 2011 compared to 2010. The main reason that the rate of growth has dropped from the near 19% to 14.5% is because of increase in prices. Thanks to rising input costs and inflation, prices of all FMCG goods from toiletries to packaged goods have gone up by between 7 and 9%. Here's how consumers have coped.
Our daily commodities which are our daily use, like food grains, soaps and whatever we use daily in our daily life should remain at least stable or come down, not go higher.
I try to use as less as possible. For earlier, it used to be that you just put the clothes for washing, whether they require, they don't require, you don't bother. So obviously you use more material. Now here only what is required is washed by the washing machine. The rest we try to manage on our own.
Inflation has increased, but and on a whole it has not affected much. Reason being, we are like such brand conscious that I cannot divert to some other brands and look for some other brands for just because of the inflation aspect. But yes, it has hit the pocket for sure.
Last year's budget was neutral for the fast-moving consumer goods industry, which means that excise duty was not hiked and stayed at 10% for most products. And while companies that make these goods had to pay a slightly higher minimum alternate tax of 18.5%, surcharge was reduced from 7.5% to 5%. Most companies believe if excise duty is hiked by 2% like it's expected to this year, prices will go up and demand will slow down.
FMCG is the least volatile and cyclical of all the industries because it's items of daily consumption. So it's the least hit. Having said that, I think especially in the discretionary items, the top end of FMCG, I think there would be a little bit of titration of consumption. And sometimes what happens is in items of large mass consumption, daily consumption, there is a risk of downtrading when there is continuous inflation.
Industry players say they are ready to sacrifice margins in the short term to gain volumes and market share in the long term. But if the goods and services tax isn't implemented soon, and if the excise duty is hiked this year, with commodity prices going north, manufacturers will have to pass on the added cost burden to consumers.
If you look at today, all the taxes put together, gross, it comes to 22%. And a GST introduced across the country in a uniform tax code, if it is there, at 16%. Now certainly there is a 6% saving overall for the industry. Now here we assume that 6% is a fair sizable saving, and if it passed on to the consumer, by the players, then certainly the consumer demand will go up.
Here's what FMCG companies would like to see in this year's budget. Surcharge, minimum alternate tax and excise duty to stay at the same levels, more tax benefits to people and increased expenditure on the NREGA so that rural consumption remains robust. They would also like the government to go ahead with the decision to allow 51% FDI in multi-brand retail. In Mumbai, Nikita Rana.
So, Mr. Biyani, FMCG and consumer, regular consumer goods, what proportion of average monthly household would they contribute to in terms of their expenditure?
It depends again on family to family,
Yeah.
and anybody who has a limited budget, I think 60% of their budgets goes towards family. I'm talking of the lower end, and it goes, it's on a spending on a consuming class economy, it's around 35 to 40%.
We saw that over the last year, we saw prices go up to 10% across, depending on what category it belonged to. And this had nothing to do with the budget. It had to do with inflationary pressures in the economy. How did that affect consumption?
If the price increases above a certain point, I think there are many consumers who downtrade. So they buy a little lesser value product. And probably that changes the consumption pattern in a sense. And ultimately, if people has to spend 4,000 rupees a month on your grocery budget, they won't increase the budget. So they will still spend 4,000, they will cut down on some items, or they will not consume certain items.
What are your views on what the finance minister is expected to do this year? Because, 2% hike in excise is what everybody seems to be talking about. Most companies are expected to pass this on to consumers in terms of higher prices. Is that something that the consumer can absorb?
Luckily, the commodity prices have been much better than what it was last year. So this impact might get absorbed. And what ultimately we need is volume growth.
Right.
And volume growth is more important than the value growth. I think if the prices, commodity prices remain the way they are, I think we should be able to manage and pass this on and rather absorb this.
On that point, we'll take a quick break, but when we return, why some manufacturers and retailers are urging you to buy your refrigerators, TVs, washing machines, home appliances before the budget. We'll be back in just a bit. Welcome back. I've been trying to understand how the budget that will be presented on March 16th will affect consumers. Future Group Chairman Kishore Biyani has been breaking that down for us. Let's take a look now at how demand for consumer durables will be impacted by this year's budget. Excise duties are expected to be hiked across a host of categories, and consumer durables are no exception. Nikita Rana reports.
2011 was one of the worst years for the 35,000 crore rupee consumer durables and appliances industry. Sales dipped, raw material costs shot up, and market leaders like LG and Samsung increased prices. For the first time in a decade, air conditioner sales dipped by 19%, and washing machines and refrigerators, which generally see a 10 to 15% volume growth every year, grew at a 7 to 9% rate. So you've given me a glimpse into what went wrong last year in terms of raw material prices and also weather factors not supporting sales of certain categories. But give us a synopsis of how has the last year been across industry for manufacturers and for retailers?
See, as far as last year across the industry, if you'll see consumer durable, it has not been one of the good years. In fact, frankly speaking, if you ask me, it's been one of a poor years in the last.
If excise duty remains flat at 10%, then that would be a big relief. If it goes up, I think we are concerned. The second thing is your import duties. There's a high import content in appliances, and all of it comes from China. If you look at the duty rates, it varies from 5% to 10%. For example, steel is at 5, chemicals at 7.5, finished goods at 10. So I don't see any relief coming on that front as well.
The government had reduced excise duty on consumer durables, home appliances and electronics progressively from 14% to 12% to 10% between 2008 and 2010. Last year, the industry was relieved because the finance minister didn't roll back the cut. But this year, the fiscal stimulus may be rolled back.
This year's budget, the request to FM would be, look at if you can, products like fridge. It's a food saving device. It's not a luxury item. You can put excise depending on the capacity of the fridge, but try and reduce the excise duty. I read it in papers 2 weeks back that he's looking at changing the excise duty and make it higher. He should encourage consumption and not decrease consumption because of the high taxes. And second thing is GST. We desperately need GST because the end consumer is going to be benefited.
In the meantime, a few retailers and manufacturers are trying to fuel demand with pre-budget offers. But most say these are really just to create some buzz around the category, and these offers stopped having a big impact on sales a long time ago.
Mobiles का value ये budget, अगला budget हर साल mobiles का value reduce होने का ही है. ये mobile companies को भी मैं advice दे रहे reduce करने को बता दीजिए. It is public का very necessary most important चीज़.
Electronics वाले जो जितना manufacturers है वो पुराना को obsolete कर देता है. बोलते ये नहीं चलता है, अभी ये चलेगा. पहले LCD, अभी बोलते हैं LED. तो क्या चक्कर चल रहा है, कोई दरकार क्या है?
We feel that the rates are likely to go up. That's why we thought. And there are good schemes. That's the main thing.
Mr. Biyani, my first question is, we do see this pre-budget offer, buy before the budget. Does that really, do consumers really bite that offer, or is it just some effort to create excitement?
I think February, March are traditionally weaker months.
Yeah.
So the idea is to pick up and generate some sales. And always budget, there has been some talk of prices going up, irrespective of the hike in excise duty, because air conditioners and because of a lot of input prices have gone up, the dollar prices have gone up. I think so the prices are bound to go up this season. So there is a scheme which we are also promoting and others are also promoting.
Sure. Are there takers for that scheme? Do consumers, advance their purchases because of this?
They do. In fact, a lot of people buy a lot of consumer durables during the month of March because of tax benefits which they can get as per the financial year ending.
Consumer durables is supposed to have seen its worst year in the past decade. Do you see budget excise hikes making it more difficult going forward, or will it be around, will it be what we saw last year?
But there are many factors which have affected the consumer durables industry. One has been the rise in commodity prices, the dollar exchange rate, and local cost inputs which has gone up, provided. And secondly, I think one of the categories didn't do well at all, which was air conditioners. Because I think the weather pattern played there a lot, and we didn't have a very strong summer last year. So many factors came in together. I think it's a combination of factors which affects the industry, and this is a very important industry for India because it makes your life a little better, you live a little better with your refrigerator, with your washing machines, with your air conditioners. And this is one category which has to grow double digits, or 20%, 25% plus. I think that's the hallmark of a growing economy, consumer durables industry. I somehow believe that everything should be done to support this industry, to make people buy and live better.
In the last budget, we know that there was a 10% excise duty levied on branded apparel. And I remember you talking to us at that point saying that it's almost like being penalized for the industry growing robustly and for managing to create brands in which there's so much value. At that time, you had also said that there might be, the industry had said that there might be a 7,000 crore rupee loss as a result. What was the past year like in regard to branded apparel?
I think like consumer durables industry, the fashion industry also saw a steep decline, rather virtually no volume growth, decline of growth. And the prices went up because again multiple factors. The cotton prices were higher, input costs became higher, and the excise duty came about. And secondly, the consumers were not willing to pay that extra price. And consumers became smart. They knew the sales are going to come about and will buy during sales. And the industry suffered a lot. Secondly, I think the entire value chain is not taxed. This tax should be coming in when GST comes in. So it creates a level playing field for everyone. Everybody moved out of branding the garments, and the whole industry changed. And I think the government also a lot of people mood out of making brands, the small manufacturers and all. So again, the level playing field got disturbed.
You mentioned GST. So far in the show, two other people have mentioned GST. Now, this is something that is not a budget declaration. This is something that has to be implemented and is stuck now for several years because the states and their role in the whole, in the whole matter. Now, the question is that really going to be something that helps consumers?
Absolutely, because GST creates a level playing field. You will get the best of goods at the best of prices, and all your input tax which you have paid, you get an output credit on that. So I think that will be the biggest beneficiary for free movement of goods and for consumer getting the choice and much better prices.
All right, Mr. Biyani, I think it's time to check how the auto industry is going to be impacted by the union budget, because really that is the big ticket consumption item on the list of most families. But we're going to do it after this commercial break. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are looking at how the union budget is likely to impact consumers on this special pre-budget show. Kishore Biyani of the Future Group is with us to explain the impact. But before we get talking, take a look at how the auto sector is likely to be affected by this year's budget.
For the auto industry, 2011 was a tough year. 2.2 million cars were sold and the industry grew by 5% over the previous year. The low growth was due to high interest rates and soaring fuel prices.
So India, the car penetration is very low. Only 14 out of 1,000 people have a car. So once they are affected the most if the cost of ownership go up, they think, okay, I have lived without car for so long, so I'll continue to live like that and not buy the car. So the first time car buyer percentage is going down.
Last year's budget was supposed to have been good for the auto industry. The partial rollback of stimulus in 2010 raised excise duty from 8% to 10%. Currently, excise duty on petrol and diesel cars below 4 meters of length is at 10%. And excise duty for petrol and diesel cars longer than 4 meters is at 22%. Diesel car sales rose last year with rising petrol prices. And in the last 3 months, these cars have got a 50% share of domestic sales compared to the 36% share they enjoyed a year ago. But now, as the Petroleum Ministry suggests a 80,000 rupee hike for all diesel vehicles, the industry anticipates a slowdown in demand for diesel cars.
As it is, the diesel cars are more expensive. We have already cars being charged at 22% extra duty, 15,000 rupees per car additional duty. With all that high cost, you put on one more cost on diesel car, and you are trying to recover what you think you're going to give subsidy over the next 5 to 7 years by way of an increase in price of a car, which I think will be a death knell for the industry. I think a lot of investment that companies are planning for diesel cars will get out of the country, and I think the government should, in my opinion, not even think of that. However, if the government is looking at as a revenue generation exercise, I can tell you that if you increase the price by that much, the demand will come down, you will not get the revenue, you won't achieve your objective at all.
Even a premium brand owner like Volkswagen, he is concerned that in case the price of diesel increases, his cost of ownership will increase. In case the price of the diesel car increases, which already is say 100,000 more than the petrol car of equal specifications, if that becomes much higher, he will be concerned about the purchase.
The industry is expecting the absolute worst post the union budget, and they may be right in their expectations. Here's what car buyers are saying.
Basically what I've done is I've started using the public transport more, and personal vehicles, consumption of personal vehicles has come down.
I end up spending around 5,000 every month, more than what I spend on a regular, my oil budget. But definitely, I don't know whom to complain, what to say. Nothing, we can just bearing it.
The speed of the increase in the petrol cost has brought me to use lesser and lesser the vehicle I am using. So that is affected, no doubt about that.
I've actually gone green by buying myself a cycle. So wherever possible, short distances, I'm actually taking my cycle just to come down on my expenses.
Taking a cycle, Mr. Biyani, maybe that is what most Indians should do.
The sales of cars are proportionately directly related to the growth of modern trade. I think if you have a car, you will go to a nearby mall, shop, fill up your car and go back home. Also, I think the petrol prices have been quite going steeper last year, and so that consumers tend to use the cars much lesser. They're only for important occasions or a trip which is necessary, because everybody calculates the value of a trip in a sense.
But Mr. Biyani, what does the government do? I know this show is actually looking at what is happening around us from the point of view of the consumer. But having said that, what does the government do? There's a deficit of 6% of GDP. Fiscal deficit is expected to be 6% of GDP when the finance minister finally makes his budget presentation. What does he do? Because diesel prices, the prices of diesel are kept artificially low. But now the auto industry and consumers don't want diesel prices to be more cars to be more expensively priced. What do we do?
I think we have to grow the economy much more faster. So everybody is a part of that economic activity and becomes more and more prosperous. And I think that will ultimately make them affordable. They will get that affordability to spend more.
Do you expect consumers to have a better life post the budget or a worse life post the budget?
One has to be optimistic about it. And I think the feel-good rich factor is going to be very important. The budget should give a lot of positive signals for people to believe that the economy will grow. They will be making much more money than what they were making earlier. And that will make them spend. And ultimately, spending will increase manufacturing, will increase services, will increase the economic activity and increase the government's
revenues therefore.
So spending is going to be more important. My take is, how can we incentivize spending? We have been incentivized savings for a long time.
All right, Mr. Biyani, it's great to have you on this show and hear your perspective. Thank you for watching. We'll let you know how it all works out. Keep watching CNBC TV18 for the most comprehensive and exhaustive coverage of the union budget. You need to, because it's your business to know. Thanks, Mr. Biyani.